I'm here for part 2 of this training. Last time we talked about like how to get the most out of your workouts, but the common question that keeps coming up is how do I know that I'm pushing hard enough to get maximum results, and why does hard enough even matter, right? So that's what we're talking about today. And if you didn't catch part 1, then you're going to want to go catch that, because that's going to build on today's, although it acts as a standalone today as well, and some of it will be repeat. But it's a good one. Hi, Jen. It's a good one to make sure that you add to your watch list before it kind of goes away. Okay. All right. So today, like I said, we're talking about like how do you know that you're pushing hard enough in your workouts? Because I gotta say, like some women are working out, they're ticking the box, but hard isn't, or intensity isn't something that they are actually considering when they're working out. And then I'm also going to go over a few things just to, that might be kind of throw you off in the sense of like, hey, I always thought this was an indicator of pushing hard or bringing intensity to the game. And I might debunk some of those myths for you too. So if you're here on the replay, then all you got to do is head to the comments and say replay. That lets me know like, hey, this is a topic of interest. You want more of these things. You're getting something from it. And it lets me know that you're an imperfect action taker. You're not just here to listen, you're actually gonna and do something with it. And if you're here live, just say, hey Cindy, I love to know that I'm not just talking to a computer, that I'm talking to someone else as well. And the opportunity when you are here live is to ask questions live, of course. All these trainings are about taking like big topics, breaking them down, making them feel like, that makes sense to me. And then how do you put that into practice? Because life is busy, life is ever moving and changing. How do you now take that and do something with it? And of course, obviously, if you're just listening to this and you're not going to do anything with it, what ends up happening is you have this knowing and doing gap. So you know a lot, but you're doing very less, or not doing enough at the same ratio or the same amount as what you know. And so then the divide between the two becomes greater and greater and greater. So then I end up hearing things like, I know what to do, I'm just not doing it, or I'm so confused, is because, hi Catherine, you're so stuck in getting information and doing nothing about it. So hi Shannon. So commit to listening to these with the intent of taking 1 to 2 steps from today's training. You can always come back and grab another step and so forth, so that you don't widen the gap between those two. Okay, so it really is about taking simple, consistent action. So how do you actually know if you're pushing hard enough in your workouts? Well, let's do some straight up talking on this. So when I first start talking or working with women, actually, some have like a good routine or a good workout routine already. They're showing up, they're moving their body, but they're just not consistent, right? Or they are consistent, but they're frustrated because the results just aren't there. They're getting down into their basement gym, or maybe they're even going to a gym. They're checking off their boxes, they're putting in the reps, but nothing is really changing. So is that something that's resonating with you? You can let me know in the comments. Yeah, that's me. Like, I'm checking off the boxes, I'm doing all the things. Sure, I'm not batting 100% on consistency, but I'm more consistent than maybe I ever have been. But I do get frustrated that it doesn't look like I'm putting in any effort. Nothing is changing for me. So what's this all about? So today we're going to like dive into this question: how do you actually know you're pushing hard enough in your workouts? Because here's the thing, sweating, here's where I'm going to hit you with it. Sweating, that's not a good sign of a good workout. I mean, I could simply just be standing outside today and be sweating my ass off, but that doesn't mean that I had a good workout. I could also be gardening, I could also be doing all of those things, but it doesn't mean that's a sign of a good workout. So sweat is not a good sign of a good workout. I have some clients who still meet with me in the gym who are high ratio sweaters, including myself, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're putting in their best effort, right? A high heart rate is not a sign of a good workout. It could be a sign that maybe you're pushing beyond your limits, or you're deconditioned, for example, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a sign of a good workout. And sore muscles are definitely not a sign of a good workout. It could mean that, hey, I did something, I'm remembering I did something to my body, but sore muscles, it's not something you chase, particularly the more practiced you are, the less of the sore muscle effect that you get. But a lot of the sore muscles, again, become, if you're not stretching, you're not warming up, you're not stretching, you're not eating properly, like the protein, you're not fueling, you have high stress, all that sort of things contribute to sore muscles, not necessarily just about having worked out. So what is? So first we got to understand like why pushing hard in your workouts is the best, hi Sharon, is the best use of your time. So first we need to understand, like, okay, you need to understand, or we need to understand why pushing hard is worth it, right? So think of it like money. You wouldn't keep throwing your money at something with no return, right? Same thing with your workouts. When you push harder with more intensity, your workouts don't have to be as long. You get more out of less time. And I know that a lot of us are fighting time, right? Is like, I just don't have time to get down there. And there used to be, or there is this belief that workouts need to be an hour long, but they don't if the intensity is there. That means shorter workouts, fewer sessions needed each week, but better results because the intensity is doing the work for you. And no, I'm not saying, skip movement. So movement is definitely different. And we're going to talk about the difference between workout and training. We're saying like, hey, if you're bringing the intensity, not only does the workout need to be shorter, and there could be an advantage to doing fewer workouts per week, but it doesn't mean that then we just, I did a workout today, I could walk tomorrow, right? Or I could still walk on the day that I worked out. So your workouts, your strength, and your HIIT sessions, those need to have purpose and intensity. It's not just about showing up, it's about how you showed up. So some of you are still stuck in the mindset of I work out so I can eat more, right? And hey, I'm not tripping that because I used to have that mindset too. But you also have to align your expectations to that. If you work out to burn 600 calories so that you can eat back 600 calories, although that's not how it works at all. But assuming that it did work that way, then don't expect any changes on the scale, right? It just gets you 600 calories to eat, although it doesn't work that way. But here's the problem. If you burn 500 calories in a workout and then again you just eat that back, or like the example I use 600 calories, you're just replacing energy. You aren't really building anything. That's how you build lean muscle. That's how you lose. That's not how you build lean muscle. That's not how you lose fat. But I get it because, even if you go into MyFitnessPal, right, and you say, okay, this is my goal, and then it spits out your numbers or whatever, and then you input your exercise, it has you eat back your calories as well. And then what it does is it closes out that deficit that you need in order to lose weight, right? So again, if you have that mindset that says I work out so I can eat more, that's fine. Just align your expectations with your results. Also understand that that's not particularly the way it works either. Just if I eat 500 calories of something that is calorie dense and it's a high sugar, and it doesn't mean that it's not having an impact on my hormones like my insulin, like my gut function or motility or anything like that. You're just looking at it from an exercise standpoint. So some of you are like, okay, I'm just going through the motions, right? And if you're doing that, you won't change. So think about it like this. It's like saying I do my meditation and my gratitude practice every day. But then when you get hit with real life shit, like you stress, the chaos, the overwhelm, you can't tap into it. You practiced it, but you didn't train yourself to use it when you actually needed it, right? Same thing. Like it's the same thing, right? Like you go to anger management, but then you just to attend the meetings, but then you're being angered or triggered. You don't know how to kind of mediate your reaction to whatever's going on. So you're using it to actually just check off a box. So you can do your reps, but if they aren't teaching your body to adapt, to get stronger, leaner, and capable, you're just moving through the motions. You're not getting the real kind of return, right? So it's like doing breathing in the morning, but then losing your cool every stressful moment during the day because you didn't practice using it when it counted. This is about making your workouts count, so you aren't just working out, you're actually training. Okay, so what is the difference between working out and training, and why does that kind of matter? So a workout is like you kind of scroll through Instagram reels for the last, you're like, oh, I really want to lose this muffin top, so I'm going to do this 5-minute core burner that says it's going to blast belly fat. So now I'm going to focus on that. Or you hit play on the Peloton class because it looks fun. So it's not necessarily because you're following a sequence of it's a 12-week or an 8-week class. It's just like I've done that one before, it's familiar. Or ooh, that one doesn't have any burpees and I hate burpees, so I'm going to do that one, for example. Or you do a YouTube sweat session you found just because you like it. Again, it's kind of like random. For example, this is what I mean by working out. It's random. It's a workout, but they aren't built to get you aren't built to get better over time. They don't track your progress. You don't lift a little heavier or push a little harder next week. There's no structure. There's no reason for your body to change. And there's no challenge. And sure, the workout might be challenging, right? But the body, the muscle, that's what I'm talking about. You can't even know if you're pushing the intensity. Sure, you're sweating a lot. Maybe your heartbeat is even beating faster. But are you pushing more than the last time? So training, on the other hand, is really strategic. It's built to improve, and it's phase-based, right? So you plan your lifts, like your sets, your reps, your weights, and then maybe next round, every round you add another 2.5 to 5 pounds, or it's like next week you add a little bit more and a little bit more, right? Which means that you actually have to be writing it out. You schedule HIIT sessions with rest and recovery built in. So HIIT isn't happening at the beginning of every workout, which is a terrible plan. It's not happening at the end of every workout, and it's not happening, 4 or 5 times a week, right? And then you actually have to measure your effort, track your movements, your quality, and adjust as you go. This is how muscles grow, and that toned look. Remember that more muscle, the better your metabolism is as well. And again, I'll reiterate that the myth that muscle weighs more than fat is not true. Muscle is just denser and occupies less space. So workouts, again, like I just said, need to have purpose. What you'll often hear is the term progressive overload, and we're going to talk about that in a second, and then recovery, because we'll also talk about that too. And if you aren't tracking weights, reps, and efforts, you're kind of flying blind, right? So you're doing random workouts. It's like taking random lessons for piano without practicing scales, no real progress, right? Training, it's showing up with purpose, building strength session by session, week after week. So if you're tired of doing workouts and seeing zero returns, then have you been working out, or have you been training? And no, training isn't just for athletes, like maybe we grew up to believe. So now the same goes for switching up your program too often. Sure, you can change. So often people are like, I'm afraid of getting bored, or I have got bored before, or I don't want to get bored. So they're changing up their program all the time. But then when you think about that concept I just talked about, progressive overload, you can't get to that stage where you're challenging the muscles. You're challenging the workout. You're sweating, your heart's beating, or whatever. Your muscles maybe are sore the next. We talked about how those aren't good indicators of a good workout, but your muscles aren't actually being challenged. So rather than looking at switching programs, what I teach people is change the lifting tempo. So oftentimes it's like, I need to get this over and done with, I got to get to work or whatever. So you're lifting super fast. Well, women have more slow twitch muscle fibers, so slow the tempo down. Do it slower, right? You can change up the exercise order rather than doing it in a circuits. Do it as a superset, do it as a straight set, right? Your rest periods, maybe you're used to 1 to 2 minutes between rests, but now you're going to change them up, right? Or your rep range. You're used to doing 15 to 20 reps because you're lifting light weights, but now you can go less reps and go heavier. Not necessarily the program. There's lots of variables within there. The question you need to answer is, what are you training for? Is it to be strong? Is it to be healthy? Is it to be fit? Is it for longevity? Is it to burn calories? Is it to build a body that lasts, right? So, and you can say all of those things, Cindy, but all of those things necessarily don't happen in one session. They can happen in a well-programmed kind of thing, but they don't necessarily happen all in one session, and they don't strictly just happen when you are working out or when you're training, right? I'm not training to burn calories. I'm training to build a body that lasts, right? There was a long season where I looked at burning calories. I was very interested in how many calories I was burning, partially because I wanted to eat them back, because I wanted to eat what I wanted to eat. But then the next one was because I was trying to be as skinny as possible. So I went through those phases. But now it's really just about lasting. Like when your back goes out and you can't get yourself to the toilet, that changes your perception of it. When you go through a health scare, it changes your perception of all of it, right? And when you see your aging parents, and when you see some of those older friends and what they're going through, it changes your perception of it. So building a body that lasts is much more important to me. Maybe it isn't to you, or maybe you're like, how do I do the two together, right? So since most women listening to this are in perimenopause or menopause, here's what you need to know. Muscle is also metabolically protective, especially in midlife. It supports your blood sugar regulation, which again is related to fat gain or fat loss, right? A hormone balance. You heard it, hormone balance, right? So rather than just thinking about, I need a supplement, or it's my hormones, it's HRT, those things can be helpful, but it's also looking at, how am I building more muscle? Bone density as well, because we know the incidences of osteoporosis go up the longer we age, the less muscle we have, and it's more prominent in females than it is in males. And even brain health, and it makes you feel like you're a badass, right? So fat loss, that's what your nutrition is for. Training is for building the body that carries you, strongly into your 60s, 70s, and 80s and beyond. But nutrition is actually going to be the biggest driver for you. So if you're like, okay, well, I'm going to start walking every day and I'm going to start building my exercise routine, that's great, but it's only going to carry you so far. So you have to adjust your expectations, and then you have to have the plan and the strategy to then get to the next section and the next one and the next one, right? When we train, we're investing in our future selves. Gracefully aging isn't soft, it's intentional, it's focused, it's structured, right? So how hard should weight training feel? Okay, here's the truth. If you're lifting weights and it feels easy, you're not going to change your body, period. So that can be where you start, because you're like, my main focus is getting a routine. I'm deconditioned. I haven't lifted weights in a long time. Great, start here. But then don't be fooled that this is the thing that's going to get you the result, or this is where you need to stay. Okay, I've got that figured out. Now I can focus over here. In strength training, you should feel like the first few reps are smooth. By the last 2 reps, your muscles are working hard, and you could maybe do one more, but you're struggling with form. This is called training closer to failure, not failing every set, but getting close enough for your body that your body kind of has to adapt. And where I started with 10 to 15 pounds. Those were kind of my max range. I had 10, I had 12, and I had 15. And that was it. I was barely touching the 20s. That's where I started. Now my max weight looks a lot different because I'm conditioned differently. I'm more practiced. So the mistake that a lot of women think is like, well, this is all I have, so this is where I'm going to stay. They never change reps, they never change tempo, they never change rest or what have you, right? All the variables that we talked about just a couple seconds ago. And so then they wonder why it's not working for them anymore. Well, it worked in the beginning when you went from nothing to that, but that's not where you stay. You need to buy more weights, or you need to go to a gym, or you need to have something else that helps you change up those variables so that you can then progress. So that's a mistake that a lot of women do, that they're never giving themselves the chance to push it, to see, okay, I'm more conditioned now, therefore I can lift heavier. So the first few reps are smooth, right? The last 2 reps, your muscles are working hard, not your breath, not your heart rate, just your muscles. You feel the muscle, and you could maybe do one or more, but you're struggling with form. That's where you want to be. That's when you know that you're training hard enough. If you get to the end of your set and you could easily do 5 to 10 more reps, your weight is too light. You're really just wasting time, right? So let me break it down a bit further. And I get it. Some women, when I work with them in the gym, they're like, yeah, but you're making me do 4 rounds, so I don't want to gas out right on the first round or the second round. And I always say, I would rather you gas out, take a longer break, or not be able to finish than have stuff left over because you were like, just in case, right? So let me break it down a bit further. So bear with me. I'm going to drop some key terms, okay? This is where you might want your notes. So RPE is something that we use to gauge your rate of perceived exertion. So RPE, rate of a perceived exertion. I don't know why that's a difficult word. Basically, it's just how hard did that last set feel. So if you're like, so there's a chart, right? You can actually Google it. You can actually type in rate of perceived exertion, or RPE, and it'll tell you how you should feel at each one, right? So if you're like, okay, looking at the chart and you're an RPE of 10, that means you had 0 reps left in the tank. That you hit total failure. There's absolutely no way you could do more. An RPE of 7 to 9 means you're working hard. You can maybe squeeze out 1 to 3 more reps with good form. And then, and so that's kind of where you want to be. So that's not where you want to start. So in your first set or your first round, if you're doing a timed workout, but it is where you want to end that workout as well. Now, does every workout have to be heavy? No, some might be more like restorative, right? You've been going at it for a long time. Some of it might be more cardio focused, but you do want to make sure that you have those in. Am I ever hitting that RPE of 10? Am I ever hitting that RPE of 7 and 9? So the RIR is the reverse. It stands for reps in reserved. How many more reps could you have done? So it's a reverse way of looking at it. So an RIR is 0 means you hit failure. So it's the same thing as the 10, right? And an RIR of 1 to 3 means you finish your set with 1 to 3 reps left before form would break down, which is the same thing as saying it's within the range of 7 to 9. Does that make sense? Once you go and look at that chart, the rate of perceived exertion, you'll be like, oh, that makes total sense. And then you'll be able to look at it as reps in reverse or the reps of exertion. Either way, you're going to get to the same kind of place. So in simple terms, it means that your muscles get tired during an exercise. They start to slow down even though you're trying to move just as fast. This slowing down happens because your muscles are getting close to basically to their limit, right? Which is called task failure. When this happens, your muscles are working really hard, and that's when they start to grow bigger and stronger, right? So the challenge with this is a lot of women, because I've been doing this for so many, they'll hold their breath, and so it becomes harder to get oxygen to the muscles, which then makes it harder to then even push even further to that failure point. But basically, that's when you know that your muscles are getting bigger and stronger. Are they getting bodybuilding strong? No, that's in the kitchen. That's a totally different type of training as well, but that happens in the kitchen. It's just you want that toned look, you want more muscle. So this can only happen within the last reps before failure when you're at a true 1 to 3 reps in reserve. So that RIR of 1 to 3. So where should you be? Most of your working sets should end around, having that 1 to 3 reps in reserve, or if you're using the RPE, 7 to 9 in that rating scale. You're working hard, but not to the point of being sloppy or, potential injury. And remember where I started with weights of 10 to 15. So when I was thinking about having an RPE of 7 to 9, I'm working within that because that was where I started. That was my capacity. And now it looks completely different. And as well, you can't say, okay, well, I'm in an RPE of 7 to 9 doing a shoulder press and I'm going to use those same weights for a squat. Let me put this in perspective, right? Like if I pick up, today when we went for a walk, I had to get down and because Maverick's really short or whatever, and I had to get down and give him water, right? And then I'm thinking, if I had to pick him up, he's 35 pounds. I at least know I can do that in the gym. Think about if you had a young mom and you're like carrying the baby carrier and the baby in it, how much does that weigh? Or I think about, I try and put all my groceries in 2 arms and carry them into the house. How much does that weigh? Or I think about carrying the 2 huge water cooler jugs into the gym. How much does that weigh? I already know, kind of, if I think about it around, I already know I should be at least starting there for a lot of my lifts, right? So you only need to hit a true RPE of 10. So you have 0 reps left occasionally using your last set or during kind of like certain strength phases of your program. Why? Because going to failure all the time, it trashes your recovery, your form starts to fall apart and your joints start taking a beating, especially after 40 when that estrogen drops as well. So most of your working sets, you want to be in the RPE of 7 to 9. You're working hard, but not at the point of being sloppy or injury. You can do some sessions where you're trying to no reps left, and then you would just want to be cautious of when estrogen falls, then you have higher inflammation, more joint pain, so you want to be cautious of that now that we're in perimenopause and menopause. Now this means you can't be doing the same reps and the same weights forever, right? So what could a smart structure look like? So you could do heavy is 1 to 5 reps, focus on strength, heavier weights, lower reps, longer rest periods. For some of you, you're not using rep ranges, you're using time, so just think about a shorter time sequence there. Moderate would be 6 to 12 reps. That builds muscle tone and definition, your bread and your butter range for most of your workouts. And then light reps would be 15 plus reps. They focus on endurance, lighter weight, shorter rest, usually more accessory work. Just remember that higher reps, lighter weights will add more time to your workouts. And higher reps all the time means more systemic kind of fatigue, more CNS strain, and that can lead to more muscle damage. And being in perimenopause and menopause, women are often faced with, not able to kind of recover at the same speed or the same way that they used to. They have less hormonal stress, buffering that, and so it creates more fatigue in the body, and then it makes kind of recovery a little bit harder. So you want to cycle through these ranges every few weeks. The goal is to try and hit each muscle group 2 to 3 times per week. For most, it will mean upper, a lower, and a total body. And again, in part 1 of this series, we covered a lot about that as well. So now, because you're training and not working out, it makes sense that your rep speed will slow down. This is also an indicator that you're working out hard enough. You're sending the right signals for your muscles to kind of grow, right? So just because you're lifting weights doesn't mean you're building muscle or even strength. You need kind of that progressive overload. Muscles need to be challenged more and more over time, like I mentioned. You need more time under tension, not just about lifting heavy. You need control, slow down those reps, focus on the form, focus on the muscle you're working on. You need protein and carbs because muscles growth happens outside the gym. It's fueled by what you eat. So most of us think, oh, I went to the gym and I grew my muscles today. No, it happens in rest, and it happens overnight when you're kind of sleeping, right? And then protein helps you kind of rebuild and grow those muscle fibers. Carbs help with the energy you need to bring the intensity and recovery properly each and every time. That's why it's, well, on top of cortisol changes in perimenopause and menopause, that's why fasted workouts aren't the best idea. And sleep and recovery, again, you think that your muscles grow when you're in training session, but they actually grow when you're resting and sleeping. So if you're not having good quality sleep, you're not allowing them enough time to recover, repair, and grow. And this also is when digestion happens too. So how much harder, so that's kind of leaves like the weight parts, right? So that should help you understand, okay, how do I know I'm bringing the intensity, I'm working hard enough, I'm pushing hard enough when I'm doing kind of my weights. So let's talk about HIIT. HIIT isn't just about doing jumping jacks and calling it cardio. HIIT means you push near your max effort for a short burst, then you rest, then you go again. This is where most women get it wrong. They think they're doing HIIT because they're sweating and out of breath, but in reality, they're doing cardio workouts with short rests and calling it high intensity. High intensity is not the same. So if you want HIIT to actually work for fat loss, fitness, or even just conditioning, you have to push near your max effort during those work intervals. And that's where you can use that RPE or that RIR that I just mentioned earlier as well. Now, your max effort will look different than the person next to you in the gym class doing the same HIIT training, and your effort will look different as you change and get stronger. Just like I said with my weights, right? My ability to do a high intensity looked much different back then than it does now. It should feel like you can't hold a conversation, your breathing is heavy and your muscles burn, and you need your rest because you pushed so hard you couldn't go without it, right? So yesterday I was on this stupid bike, the road bike or whatever, the assault bike. And I don't know if it's like the wind coming up from the wheel or whatever, but it was hard to sustain 20 seconds with 10 seconds of recovery. Like I was doing it Tabata, it was super hard to sustain that same intensity every single time. So true HIIT is 80 to 100% effort, not 50%. Not this is hard, but I could keep doing it forever. And we know that women can often outlast men in this capacity here. And this is going to help you burn more calories, yes, even though the HIIT session is shorter, build more speed and power, and let's not forget cardiovascular health too. Not to mention, when you bring intensity, you think about, I burn calories in that lifting session. You're going to burn more calories in the HIIT while you're doing the HIIT workout than you are with the weight workout, although you might burn a little bit more if you're doing lower body, for example, just because it's a bigger muscle group. But if you do a watch, you're gonna burn more calories doing HIIT than you're doing weights. But if you're bringing the intensity to both, you got something called EPOC, so your ability to keep burning calories after you're done your workout remains high if you bring that intensity, whether it is either one of those options, whether it's a short HIIT session or whether it's a weight session, and that's what you want, because if you're still burning once you left the gym, think about what you're doing. Well, now you're sitting at a computer, maybe you're going to bed, or maybe you're driving for long periods of time, and now you're eating. That's when you want the calorie burn, right? So an example of that could be 20 seconds of really hard effort, and maybe you need longer recovery, so you need 40 seconds of rest. Maybe you're doing 30 seconds of a really hard push, but you need 60 to 90 seconds of rest in between. Maybe you're doing 45 seconds of a really heavy push or a big push, but you need 90 to 120 seconds of rest. What determines your rest? Well, you need as much rest as it's going to take you to be able to push at the same speed, the same intensity for the next round. The more and more rounds you do, the less efficient you become, right? So if you're doing short rests, back-to-back movements, feeling the burn the whole workout, that's just high intensity cardio. Nothing wrong with it, but it won't deliver the same fat burning or fitness boosting, muscle shaping results as proper HIIT. So now let's say let me also say that let me also say this about HIIT training, right? A large percentage of women can't tolerate high stress. So, and HIIT is a form of stress on the body. So when estrogen and progesterone decline, our ability to manage stress goes down. So what we used to do is now too much, and it equals weight gain because cortisol is up. Especially if you're under eating, you're over exercising, not sleeping well, dealing with belly bloat, and struggling with energy crashes. These are all signs your body is having a hard time keeping up with the demands you're placing on the body. So we want to question whether you're in a place to keep HIIT or to start it, but also what your recovery looks like too. In this case, dropping exercise frequency is best, right? So it's an important point that I make is consistently, but that I'm going to put aside for a minute, is the fact that high intensity cardio or lots of cardio in general in the menopausal season of your life, or if you're dealing with metabolic dysfunction or weight loss resistance issues, is a bad idea, compounded if you're also trying to eat in a caloric deficit and trying to lose fat. So all this to say is that you have to think about the dosing. Oftentimes when we think I'm on a roll, more is better, more is better, more is faster, that could certainly backfire for you now because you have hormonally you've shifted, and so it doesn't operate the same way as maybe it used to operate. We also don't often think about exercise as a stressor on our body. So if you're really, really high stress just because of life shit that's happening to you, and then you go and you increase the intensity of the HIIT training, it's another stressor on the body, right? And particularly if it then increases hunger levels, increases cravings, decreases your sleep or whatever, then it's going to be working against you. And so then it's going to feel like I'm doing everything and nothing is working. And that's why, right? So sometimes with some of my clients, we have to scale back before we can level up. So what is underrated here is simply walking. So there was some research done by the Stanford University, for example. They found that people who walked through nature show lower levels of blood flow to the parts of their brain associated with rumination. How great is that? Which is what we want to do when we can't stop thinking those negative thoughts, or we're stuck in kind of a mental pattern. So walking, especially outside, reduces both emotional stress and it reduces physiological stress because of the parasympathetic activating that kind of rest and digest, stay and play nature of walking. So basically it brings peace to your body mentally, physically, and emotionally, which is important in perimenopause and menopause, particularly when we have a lower stress tolerance, and we have all of these kind of hormonal things happening. So high intensity activity, on the other hand, serves more as a stress distractor via hard work. However, when adding physiological stress, given the sympathetic activating fight or flight nature of high intensity work. So let me be clear on this. Walking is a non-negotiable. Daily movement, especially walking, is a baseline for all women I coach. It's low stress. It supports hormonal. That doesn't mean that they're actually using I don't even own a fitness tracker, but that doesn't mean that they're necessarily tracking their time or they're tracking their steps. It just means that they need to get out and walk, right? For some women, that means 10 minutes after meals because they have insulin resistance, or they have, some insulin sensitivity after meals, for example, or they don't have optimal digestion. For others, they're able to get it in the morning. For others, they're getting it in the evenings because it's part of their sleep routine. They're calming themselves down after a day. So when you get it in is not as important. It's based on you, right? But daily movement, especially walking, is a baseline. It's low stress. It supports your hormonal health. It reduces anxiety. It improves digestion, helps you sleep, and supports fat loss. You don't need to earn it. You don't need to track it kind of obsessively, like I said. It's just part of how we care for our bodies every day. It's kind of like how you brush your teeth. That's how you should think about it. Now, HIIT is just a different story. HIIT is conditional. It's especially for women in the perimenopause or menopause. You have to earn the right to do the HIIT. Why? Because HIIT, again, is another stressor on the system. When your body's already drugging a lot of hormonal shifts, sleep struggles, mood swings, and energy crashes, adding high intensity intervals tend to backfire. So here's how you decide. If you're sleeping well, you're recovering between sessions, you're eating enough protein and calories, you're managing your stress, then try HIIT 1 to 2 times per week. That can be beneficial. And if you're under eating, over exercise, barely sleeping, and feeling bloated, puffy, or constantly exhausted, HIIT is not your solution. It's actually part of the problem. So HIIT is optional, it's a tool, not a must have. Oh, and contradictory or contrary to what social media will tell you, your body doesn't adapt just like that. So if you're bringing intensity, it isn't the same each time. But if you are doing the same every time, your body will adapt. Same being the same weight, same order, same tempo, same rest, same. So social media likes to say like, hey, this coins in the 90s, P90X was the thing that came out, and it was like muscle confusion, right? Now that was just a marketing term that they made up. There actually isn't any science or anything to kind of back up that term. Your body doesn't adapt that easily, so you just get more efficient. So like I said, I remember when I first even just started running 5K, I could barely catch my breath. I would be so crampy, I could barely do it. And now I'm running 21 and a half. You just over time progress. Now, that isn't an example of HIIT training, but even just like doing, HIIT kind of style workouts, it was like breathless. I needed longer recovery times, and now I'm more efficient at it. I can push a little bit harder. I can get more of those reps in the amount of time, and I need less rest time in between to get through them. They're more intense, and they're shorter. I used to also be very much confused with intervals in HIIT training. I thought 20 to 30 minutes meant I was in a HIIT session. No, it was not, right? And once you start to understand different energy systems in the body, you understand why that's not even possible, right? So what ends up happening though is that it's just like how a mail carrier, if they went from a sedentary job and they become a mail carrier, or somebody went from working at an office to now working on, a production floor, for example, they will see shifts in their weight, right? Because they're just going from nothing to something. But then over time, then how come mail carriers come in all different shapes and sizes, construction workers all shapes and sizes? Yes, diet has a place there, but also because the body, it does adapt over time, but it doesn't happen from session to session or week to week. So now that we covered intensity, workouts versus training, let's talk volume. For example, too many exercises in one session or too many reps and sets, that just tires you out, right? But it's not effective. You're better to pick 4 to 6 exercises in the rep ranges I kind of described with the rest breaks, and bring your intensity to those versus doing more exercises. So rest breaks, I want to spend a little bit of time here. So because many people do rush through their sets with minimal rest, thinking they're just getting more done. While shorter rest intervals have their place, longer rest intervals are actually optimal for muscle growth, especially on those heavy, hardworking sets. For muscle growth, it lowers the risk of overtraining and CNS fatigue, better recovery and progress, especially for women in perimenopause and menopause, and increases strength, which equals more muscle over time, right? So whether it's HIIT or weight training, rest is kind of part of it. So you want to rest in between sets, rounds, and also sleep. That's important too, but also days off as well. Sure, you could walk in between, take the dog out for a walk, put on your weighted vest and go for a walk, but we're talking about rest in between weight training or HIIT sessions. But oftentimes what women struggle with is it can feel like a waste of time. We feel guilty, or we feel like we're wasting time, or it's like, oh, we're at home, so I have some rest breaks, so I'll go do some laundry. Oh, wait a minute, I forgot I was working out, right? We think get it in and get it out. I got shit to do, and it can feel like that waste of time. But they are needed to bring the same intensity the next round or set, the next time you do the training session, right? Okay, and I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the importance of muscle, right? So one, improved longevity. Maintaining muscle and strength as you age is associated with lower mortality rates, right? Two is it improves metabolic health. It's linked to insulin sensitivity and glucose metabolism. Muscle helps with glucose uptake and insulin sensitivity, which contributes to better metabolic health. And that's definitely because insulin shifts in your perimenopausal and menopausal ages, so it's definitely something you want to think about. It improves your basal metabolic rate. So more muscle means that you have a higher resting metabolic rate. It's not as much as as peddled around the internet. So So it's like basically it's like me just being here and me doing everyday things. It's like I have a higher metabolism if I have more muscle just doing those everyday things than someone who doesn't have any muscle, or someone who has really low muscle, or someone who has a lot more fat on their body. You got better bone health, which is really great, because stronger bones means you're apt more to recover later in life, to protect yourself from falls and that sort of thing. There's like it's a predictor of functional capacity in older adults, which means you can do those everyday things and live life a lot easier. There's a reduced risk of sarcopenia, which is age-related loss of muscle, and that happens at 3 to 5% rate of muscle loss after each decade after the age of 30. So that's huge, like huge, right? There's cardiovascular health as well. There's posture and balance. There's mental health as well. And then there's also better body composition, right? It's basically you look different. You look like you train. You look more toned. So what do you need to know about muscle now that you're in perimenopause or menopause? Well, perimenopause increases something called your anabolic resistance, which makes it harder to build that muscle. And with muscle and strength loss, that kind of accelerates as you age. Losing muscle isn't something you can afford, right? So what is anabolic resistance? As you get older, your muscles don't respond to food and training as easily as they used to. So think of it like trying to grow a plant. When you're younger, the plant grows quickly with just a little bit of water and sunlight, but as you get older, the plant needs more water and sunlight to grow the same way. So, and that does not mean more and more and more, right? Because we just talked about intensity. During perimenopause, your body needs more protein and more progressive overload, more of that intensity. This is why hitting your daily protein targets is essential for maintaining and building muscle. So I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about overdoing it, right? So how to tell you're doing it too much? You're always tired even after rest days. You can't get stronger. You actually feel weaker. And sometimes that is related to where you are in the follicular phase as well, but sometimes that's also related to the season of your life, like you're in a stress season, you're maybe not sleeping well. So then you want to modify your training program accordingly. You're sore for days after a normal workout. Sometimes that happens because you pushed way too much further than where you are, and you're just starting out. Your sleep sucks and you feel anxious all the time, and you get sick more often as well, particularly cold and flu sick. That's kind of where it's kind of a flag that you're training. And I want to briefly talk about food, because that is actually the bigger driver when it comes to seeing results, not the workouts. So if you're under eating, not sleeping, skipping rest, don't expect your workouts to fix it. You're just kind of digging a further hole. I won't spend too much time on this because there's lots of other trainings that you can tune into that are going to cover this as well. So over 40, you need more protein, not less. It helps to build and maintain that muscle. So, 25 to 30 grams of quality protein per meal. That's really great. If you're like, I think I'm getting that. No, I don't want you to be in a think. I want you to be in an I know. So track it, double check. This matters because hormones change, making it harder to build that muscle like we talked about. So you need protein there. Fiber isn't just about digestion. It kind of helps balance that blood sugar and control hunger, both of which can shift during menopause. And whole foods such as lean proteins, vegetables, fruits, and whole grains, they help you feel fuller, longer, more energized. And that means that you're better set up for your workouts too. And you can't just eat less and expect results anymore. You need food that supports your workouts and your recovery. And it's not about restriction. It's about building meals that support your training, your daily function, your long-term health. We covered a lot in part two, and I hope to continue the conversation. I know some of you have asked for pre and post workout meals. I also want to talk a little bit more about cardio and the perimenopause and menopausal shift and that sort of thing. So there's more to uncover here, but I've left you with a lot to kind of unpack as well. So my goal is that I was able to take a bigger topic, make it a little bit more simplified for you, and then helped you understand how to take imperfect action. Use the RPE, use those rep ranges, think about how many sets and rounds you want to do. Think about, okay, how do I structure it between my HIIT training if that's where you're at, right? Or maybe you need to back off HIIT training. There's a lot that you can take away from it. Some of it you'll take away now, and then some of it you'll come back and you'll be ready to add in the next component so you can come back and grab it, right? So these trainings are one way I can offer you support in your own health and fitness journey, but also I do coach one-to-one in a kind of a remote online capacity. And so that's where we're working on all of the pieces together at the same time in a very progressive way. So we're working on nutrition, exercise, stress, and sleep, with the goal of supporting not only your hormones, but supporting energy, digestion, and of course in a sustainable way so that you not only lose weight, you keep the weight off. And it's really just about having the structure, the tools, and a high level of accountability when we're coaching together. So if that's something of interest to you, then you want to pop into my DMs so that I can understand what your goals are and what your obstacles are, and then we can kind of go from there and see if coaching is a good fit. So, as we wrap up today's coaching, I always like knowing what is your imperfect action as a result of listening today. I hope that you just didn't take 45 minutes just to listen to widen the gap between what you know and what you're not doing. I hope you took the 45 minutes today to listen to this training to actually take one thing and implement it consistently. It doesn't have to be perfectly, but consistently for the next 30 days and kind of see what shifts happen for you. Remember that exercise is it's one of the smallest parts when it comes to fat loss, weight loss, or sustaining it. And so you do want to look at the other components. If your strategy right now is just looking at this, you're missing a lot of the bigger pictures. It's kind of like you're saving pennies when you could be saving dollar bills, $100 bills, and that sort of thing. So you want to look at this here, but you also want to make sure that the other pillars are also optimized for you as well, particularly in perimenopause or menopause. So head to the comments, tell me what action are you taking as a result of today's training. I'm Coach Sinning. I hope to see you here